Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. President Donald Trump said he expects to meet Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. Meanwhile, interim leader Delcy Rodriguez rejected Trump's claims of U.S. control, insisting Venezuela remains sovereign. According to Ukrainian officials, Russian drone strikes has hit Kyiv just before midnight of Friday, killing 4 people, including an emergency medic, and injuring at least 19, with 14 hospitalized. Military administration head reports building and critical infrastructure were also damaged. According to U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, India's trade deal with the United States stalled after Prime Minister Narendra Modi did not make a call to President Donald Trump to seal the agreement, leading to Washington doubling tariffs on Indian goods to 50%, including a 25% penalty over India's Russian oil purchases. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance urged Europe to take Donald Trump seriously on Greenland after Washington floated buying the Danish territory and did not rule out military action to secure it. Israeli strikes killed at least 11 Palestinians across the Gaza Strip on Thursday after the Israeli military said it targeted a site following a failed rocket launch, with medics reporting that 4 people, including children, were killed in a tent strike in Khan Yunis, while Hamas claims more than 1,100 Israeli ceasefire violations since October. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung will visit Japan on Tuesday to meet Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi in Nara. The summit will include discussions and a dinner on regional and global issues. A South Korean government commissioned report has found that the December 2024 Jeju Air Boeing 737-800 crash, which killed 179 people of 181 passengers on board, might not have been fatal without a concrete mound supporting a local ISTER antenna that failed international safety standards, as victims' families and lawmakers now press for accountability over alleged government negligence. U.S. President Donald Trump has said he held a great meeting with Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan, calling him very successful and praising the U.S. government's 10% stake in the chipmaker Intel. Shares have jumped in extended trading, up about 75% since the CHIPS Act investment. Now we start this hour with Russia and Ukraine. Russia has launched a rare hypersonic missile attack on Ukraine overnight, striking Kyiv and Lviv amid freezing winter temperatures. The Oreshenik missile, one of Moscow's most advanced weapons, travels 10 times the speed of sound and can carry conventional or nuclear warheads. In Kyiv, multiple drone strikes hit residential buildings, killing 4 people and wounding 19 others. Street lights flickered and large parts of the city were plunged into darkness. Authorities in Lviv reported a missile strike on infrastructure, but no casualties so far. The attacks comes as while Russia warns Western troops in Ukraine would be considered illegitimate targets and following the U.S. seizure of a Russian-flagged oil tanker, escalating tensions further. However, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has already warned of a massive Russian attack. Let's listen into what the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has shared.
Дуже важливо звертати увагу на повітряні тривоги сьогодні, завтра, постійно, спускатися в укриття. Росіяни незмінні, вони намагаються скористатися погодою.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Gilbert Doctorow. He's a Russian affairs expert, joins us live from Brussels. Thank you very much, Dr. Doctorow, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now, how do you analyze this current situation between, Russia and Ukraine? Do you think that is it escalating, or do you think that there could be, these strikes from both sides could be jeopardizing any ceasefire talk efforts?
Well, the situation is definitely escalating, but that is reciprocal to the pressure that's now about to be applied to Russia by the United States. If indeed the bill presently in the US Senate is passed and is given to Mr. Trump to sign, imposing 500% secondary tariffs on countries like India, Brazil, that have been purchasing Russian oil. So that the curious thing about this is that people are not talking about what the consequences of such tariffs will be on Russia. That Russia may go and do what it should, some people say it should have done long ago, which is to utterly destroy the Ukraine. The interesting thing, the very important thing about your news item this morning regarding the latest missile attack on Kiev is that, as you say, it was an Oreshnik that was used. That is a dramatic point of escalation. As you say, the Oreshnik is both conventional and nuclear armed. And that is a message to Washington, to London, to Berlin. That first of all, that Russia has enough of these Oreshniks that it's ready to use them and not just talk about them, because the only use so far occurred more than a year ago in a strike on a military production facility in the Ukrainian city of Dnipro. Since then, we've heard a lot about the Oreshnik among theoreticians, but we haven't seen it used. We know that it's been deployed in Belarus. So there's talk, but no action. What would have happened yesterday is action, very important action. It will be interesting to see what the investigators tell us about the extent of destruction that the Oreshnik's use in Kiev caused. There was much discussion about what happened in the attack on Dnipro, whether or not the Oreshnik really did have the impact of a nuclear weapon, or whether its impact was far less severe. So that will be something to follow up very definitely in the days ahead.
So building on that, how do you see the alliance or state of alliance or alignment between the European allies of Ukraine and the coalition of the willing and the U.S. after the talks that were held this week?
Well, there are two elements to the dynamic in the alignment or relationship between the United States and the European leaders. The first is, as you say, it has to do with security guarantees for Ukraine following any conclusion of any peace agreement. And that has been an issue of negotiation between the United States and Europe, although we understand that there apparently is an agreement that the United States will enter into the security guarantees part of the peace settlement. The other dynamic is regarding the American ambition, American designs on taking over Greenland. And that is, at this moment, completely unaligned. But what we see there, and it describes the overall relationship between these two groups, Europe and the United States, is that the Europeans understand that they are very weak militarily, that they are utterly dependent on the United States for their defense, the American nuclear umbrella, to protect them against the raging Russian bear, whom they have been antagonizing, poking in the eye at every opportunity for the last several years. So this relationship is, Europeans are supplicants. They are not equal partners to the United States. And the curious thing is that their latest threats, if Mr. Trump proceeds with, shall we call it, a military takeover of Greenland, is that the European countries would pull out of NATO. I would like to just introduce to your listeners an alternative reading of this. There is nothing that could make Mr. Trump happier than if the European leaders pulled out of NATO, because it is no big secret that Mr. Trump does not like NATO, does not like the EU. So this relationship is very complicated. It is being exposed in major media only in a very partial way.
Yes.
And it deserves much more attention. I'm very happy that you are directing attention to it.
Thank you for highlighting that. And Dr. Doctorow, So why there's this huge gap between how Trump sees Europe and how predecessors of Trump, or the previous U.S. governments saw Europe?
It is completely a different understanding of the world order and how it should be. And we saw that a little more than a month ago when Mr. Trump presented his new national security strategy document, which upended the U.S. foreign policy priorities that had been in place since the creation of NATO in 1949. He is talking about a foreign policy that is very muscular, that is based on might makes right, that has no pretense about furthering democracy, about human values and so forth, but is about America's core material interests and furthering America's control or hegemony, at least in the Western Hemisphere, and to a certain extent, farther afield. One of his priorities is the destruction of BRICS. His predecessors talked about how BRICS was a threat, a multipolar world was against the interests of the United States, but they were not prepared to do anything. He is prepared to do it, and we see that in the tariffs he's imposed on India, on China, on Brazil.
Very enlightening. Thank you very much, Dr. Doctorow, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to our next news, U.S. President Donald Trump has slammed Republican senators who voted to curb his military powers. In a Truth Social post, he has stated that Republicans who have supported Democrats in curbing his powers should be ashamed. This comes as the U.S. Senate voted on January 8th to advance a war powers resolution that would bar Trump from taking further military action against Venezuela without congressional approval. The motion moved forward on a 52-47 vote, with every Democrat and 5 Republicans supporting the measure. Lawmakers say the action signals growing concern in Congress about unilateral military operations coming days after a U.S. raid in Caracas resulted in the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and sparked debate over executive authority. The resolution must still pass both chambers and could face a presidential veto, making its final outcome uncertain. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Dr. Gilbert Doctorow. He joins us from Brussels. Thank you very much, Dr. Doctorow, for staying with us. As you were highlighting, there's a very huge difference in understanding of how Trump sees Europe, and then how Trump sees, or the other leaders saw Europe. And now, do you think there's a big gap in understanding of how U.S. or Trump sees the U.S. domestic politics as well?
Well, the underlying principle of Trump's actions is might makes right. And in that respect, the consequences of carrying out this principle are not so different from what predecessors have done, but the justification for it, the explanation for it, is entirely different. When you speak about the kidnapping of Maduro in Venezuela, you have to have a little bit of memory. A similar action was taken by the United States in 1989 by then President Bush when he invaded and captured the leader of Panama, Noriega, who was taken to American prisons where he lived out the rest of his life. So I say in a practical matter, what Mr. Trump has done is not so very different from what some of his predecessors have done, but the explanation to the public and to the world at large is entirely different. It is no fairy tale. It is saying that we can do it and we will do it. And he puts the world on notice. So that is a very big difference.
And lastly, what are the broader implications for U.S. foreign policy if Congress asserts more control over military decisions, especially in light of recent unilateral actions in Venezuela?
Well, I didn't quite answer your first question, and this is going into what you've now just asked. I have to. emphasize
Thank
that
you.
it is a wonderful thing that the Congress has remembered, the Senate has remembered, that its constitutional responsibility is to vet, to approve or disapprove of American foreign policy initiatives. In that respect, I believe this was Senator Ron Paul, who was Rand Paul, who was responsible for this latest vote in the Senate. And it is an important action reminding us that there is a Congress, that it is supposed to be constitutionally required to be a check on presidential powers. So that is all to the good. Of course, the horse is out of the bone already. As regards Venezuela, President Trump himself has forsworn further military action. So it is giving him a warning for actions that he does not intend to take anyway. Nonetheless, it is very good that Congress has awakened from its long slumber, and we'll see how this impacts on further military adventures that the Trump administration may be planning, and most in the nearest horizon, what he would do to capture Greenland.
With that, I would like to thank Dr. Gilbert Doctorow for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move the focus on to United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has expressed regret over President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw the United States from multiple international organizations. UN spokesperson Stephen Dujarric has said that Guterres emphasized that the organizations will continue to carry out its mandates for those who depend on it. Meanwhile, the UN climate chief Simon Stiell warned that the U.S. exit from a global climate treaty would be a colossal own goal, harming the country's economy, jobs, and living standards. Stiell has said that the decision could leave the United States less secure and less prosperous. Let's listen in.
Secretary General regrets the announcement by the White House regarding the United States' decision to withdraw from a number of United Nations entities. As we have consistently said and underscored, assess contributions to the United Nations regular budget and the peacekeeping budget as approved by the General Assembly are legal obligations under the United Nations Charter for every member state, including the United States. All United Nations entities will go on with the implementation of their mandates as given to us by member states. The United Nations has a responsibility to deliver for all those who depend on us, and we will continue to carry out our mandates with determination.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Rohan Gunratna. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Singapore. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now,
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, looking at this, what do you think, what will be the immediate and also long-term effect of U.S. pulling out like this from many international organizations, not just UN's?
Asuma, what we are seeing is U.S. is withdrawing not only from international organizations, but also conventions and treaties. The U.S. says is contrary to the interests of the United States. This is going to have a major impact because U.S. withdrawing from those organizations will mean lack of resources for those organizations because the U.S. is a very powerful and a very rich country. So, for instance, some of the organizations that they will withdraw would be the 24/7 Carbon-Free Energy Compact, the Colombo Plan Council, the Commission for Environmental Cooperation, Education Cannot Wait, European Center for Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats. So if you look at the quality of those organizations, they have played a very important role in influencing and in shaping global peace, global stability, global cooperation and collaboration and partnership. So I think that it's going to have a very major impact. And if you look at the UN agencies, it is withdrawing, it will be the UN Democracy Fund, the UN Energy, the UN Entity for Gender Equality and Empowerment of Women, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UN Human Settlements Program, UN Oceans, UN Population Fund. So I believe that it's going to have a major impact on global safety, global security, and also the capacity of governments to work together and to build a stable and a peaceful world.
Right, thank you for highlighting that. And I hope not, but do you think that there could be a chance that other countries might follow the suit?
I think other countries will step up and provide more assistance. I don't think they will want to retreat. I think, for instance, the Australians, the New Zealand, Canada, UK, and continental Europe, these countries will provide more assistance and support for the multilateral organizations because they understand the value of working together, working in partnership. Trump is moving more towards isolation and building US power, US capabilities rather than global power and multilateral power.
Building on that, Professor, what do you think US's goal is here? What do you think Trump is trying to prove here by pulling, US out of all these places and causing this rippling effect?
Trump wants to save taxpayers' money. Trump wants to advance US interests, not global interests. Trump believes that some of these organizations are working contrary to US interests. And that is his point of view.
Right. And what do you think, don't you think he thinks that US interest and global interest has some kind of alignment, or there could be some similarities in them, right?
In cases where there is compatibility, then he will support those organizations. But in other institutions, he will withdraw. That is his policy and plan. Anyway, this will be only for a period of 2 years. So during that 2 years, governments will have to be more patient. Leaders will have to be more patient. But also there's something else. They can have a discussion and a dialogue with him and speak to him and tell him what is important for global stability and global peace. Whether he listens or not, I think the European leaders, especially who are close to him, should go and meet with him and have a conversation.
Right. Do you think that these organizations will try to kind of change their maybe policies to be more aligned with him so that he doesn't pull out or get some funds from US? Do you think they will do that?
I think they should, because they should try to accommodate the wish of the United States to some extent at least. But what is important is to keep the US engaged, because if US pulls out of these organizations, it will be a big blow. It's like Trump pulled out of the USAID, the United States organization that provides so much of assistance and aid, developmental assistance to Asia, Africa, Middle East, and Latin America. It is a very big blow to those people living in poverty, those people living with health issues. So I think that what is important is to remain engaged in this day and age.
Thank you very much, Professor Gunratna, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on to our next news. Syria's defense ministry has declared a ceasefire in 3 neighborhoods of the northern city of Aleppo, a move that could halt fresh fighting between government troops and Kurdish fighters. The deadly standoff between Damascus and Kurdish authorities, who have resisted integrating into the central government, is a major challenge for Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa, who has pledged to unite the country after 14 years of civil war. Meanwhile, Tom Barak, Washington's special envoy to Syria, issued an urgent appeal to the Syrian government and Kurdish fighters to halt their fighting in Aleppo. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Rohan Gunratna. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Singapore. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, how might Kurdish authorities leverage in this situation, or can they?
Asma, what we have seen is that there are 4 minority communities in Syria. There are the Shiites, what you call the Alawites, the Druze, the Christians, and the Kurds. All these communities have suffered under the rule of Ahmad al-Shara, known as Abu Muhammad al-Jolani. So instead of putting military pressure on those ethnic and religious communities to unite with the Sunni population of Syria, he should create autonomous regions. He should not intervene in those regions. If he does that, there will be no peace in Syria. So if he's a wise man, he will not try to impose especially Sharia law or Islamic law, because people are tired of Sharia law. Wherever Islamic law has been put in force, there has been a lot of instability and violence, whether it is in Afghanistan or whether it is in Iran. And what is important is to have secular law so that those communities, those constituencies will also work with the Sunni community. So for there to be long-lasting peace, it is important for Ahmad al-Shara, the new president, the new leader of Syria, to understand the sentiment of those communities that also suffered during the previous regime. And he must have that far-reaching vision to work together with all communities.
100%, very important. Thank you for highlighting that. And lastly, what role can U.S. play? Like we saw Tom Barak issue a warning, I think, about this.
U.S. has a very special relationship with the Kurds because ultimately to defeat ISIS, the terrorist group called the Islamic State, in 2019 in the Euphrates River, the main fighting formation was the Kurds. So the Kurds, every country, every community should be indebted to the Kurds, because if not for their fighting capabilities and skills, the monstrous terrorist group called the Islamic State would still be in power and conducting attacks and killing people and maiming people, injuring people. So I think that the Kurds should be protected, the Alawites should be protected, the Christians should be protected, and the Druze should be protected. And this can only be done if the United States and European countries send a very clear message to Ahmad al-Shara: do not go to areas where those communities live and try to force them to integrate, but to keep them as autonomous regions.
Great. With that, I would like to thank Professor Rohan Gunratna for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. Authorities in Australia's Victoria are battling catastrophic bushfires as an intense heat wave grips on the region. 3 people are missing after fires tore through homes in bushland. Firefighters are contending with 30 active blazes, with winds and temperatures up to 46 degrees Celsius, making many fires undefendable. The largest fire near Longwood has burned more than 35,000 hectares, destroying homes in a community center and telephone exchange near Valva. Another fire has consumed around 20,000 hectares of bushland and a pine plantation, but no homes so far. Victoria's Premier calls today one of the most dangerous fire days in years. Emergency crews continue to search for the missing adults and child in Longwood. Now we move on to our tech news. Google is rolling out new Gemini-powered tools in Gmail aimed at making emails easier to manage and search. The updates include AI overviews, Help Me Write, and AI Inbox, all powered by Gemini 3. starting with users in the US and English, with expansions to other languages and regions planned. AI overviews can summarize long email threads, highlight key points, and allow users to ask questions directly to their inbox using natural language. Summaries are free for all, while questions asking requires paid Google AI subscription. Help Me Write offers smart drafting, improved replies, and a proofread tool that checks grammar, tone, and style. Basic features are free, with advanced proofread available to paid users. AI Inbox prioritizes important messages and tasks, pushing less relevant emails into the background based on contacts, relationships, and time-sensitive information, while maintaining their user privacy. Google says the rollout is gradual, with some features available to limited testers and full access coming in the coming months. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.